I would say that they need to realize they have not walked this way before, and that it's a new experience, and they need the Lord to direct them and give them advice. To love regardless, but never to punish in anger. Then was drafted into Hitler Youth at the age of 14.
Wow.
And he always said that was like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. When I shook Peter's hand, it was like a lightning bolt hit me.
Yeah.
And I knew it was you. This is the man you may marry. He had vowed he would grow up and become a test pilot and shoot down the Kremlin.
So like part of his condition, like when he had a bit of a breakdown in the mental illness, he turned into a bit of a child.
Oh, fully.
Full child.
Full child.
Wow.
Full child. Marriage has the ability to bring about all the selfishness that is in you.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Scott.
Can you tell me your full name?
My full name is Margaret Penner.
Okay. What year were you born?
I was born in 1932.
So that makes you about 90?
Full 90, yes.
A full 9 years old. Okay, wow. Where were you born?
I was born just about 50 miles from Grand Prairie, up at La Glace in Northern Alberta.
Wow. What was your childhood like?
My childhood, well, up and down, but very good in a way. Other people tell me they were envious of Mother because Dad would help her with the little ones.
Okay.
Which their husbands didn't do, but Mother had postpartum depression after my third sister was born, and so I became Daddy's special girl.
Okay. How many children were in the family then?
All told, there were 12.
12 children.
I'm number 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What did your parents do for work?
Actually, my parents came to Canada on their 5th wedding anniversary in 1925.
Mm-hmm.
They came as farmers, and Dad had a new John Deere D with a new plow, and he plowed at least 400 acres of virgin soil in the La Glace area.
Wow.
After 29, through the Depression.
Yeah.
And sold, I sent a box full of wheat to Edmonton. Wheat was 25 cents a bushel then.
Yeah.
And it came back, he had a bill for the freight. No check at all.
Oh, wow. The price was so low on
Yes.
grain. Wow.
And the price, and then he said, we have to get closer to an elevator.
Okay.
And we're able to move to Tofield, east of Edmonton,
Okay.
in 1935, 36.
Okay. Wow. And then so you went to Tofield, and then you wound up back in the Grand Prairie area.
Yes, but with my husband.
With your then husband. Okay.
After 1960.
Okay. So tell me, when did you get married?
And we got married in 1956 to Peter Penner.
Okay.
Peter was a new Canadian.
Yeah.
And
Where did Peter come from?
he came from Ukraine
From the Ukraine.
and lost his dad at the age of 9 to Stalin's purges,
Okay.
and came to Germany after Hitler moved into Russia and then was drafted into Hitler Youth at the age of 14.
Wow.
And he always said that was like jumping from the frying pan into the fire.
Oh, it wasn't a good experience.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Wow.
And then he had a hernia because of the cruel things. They had to carry a heavy rock and jump up a hill on their haunches.
Okay.
And woe had the person that dropped the rock.
Okay.
And he and a friend who had had hernia surgery were to take the bazooka against the Allied forces.
Yeah.
And they felt they couldn't do it, and they went to the upper commander to ask to be released, and they could have been shot on the spot. But at that moment, an elderly gentleman came in asking for, don't you have 2 boys who could help my daughter, because her husband was a army general and he was just sent to the front.
Okay.
The fellow, take these 2.
Wow.
And that's the way Peter escaped facing the war, came into a refugee camp. And
So after the war was over, there was a refugee camp that he was
Yes.
able to go to.
the MCC, Mennonite Central Committee, opened refugee camps for the refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also who helped him connect with his uncle and aunt in Lethbridge.
Okay.
These-
So that's how he came to Canada.
That's how
Okay.
he came to Canada when he was 19 years old.
Okay. And when did you meet him?
I met him the year after because we were both, the church was giving the refugees free opportunity to go to Bible school.
Okay.
And I went to Bible school. I met Peter there, but never talked to him. I knew his sisters quite well.
Okay.
And 8 years later, when he was going to university in order, by then he had his high school.
Mm-hmm.
His mother had a debt-free house. He joined the teachers who were needed badly when the baby boomers came to school.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And by then he had his high school, had 4 subjects in high school, and took 6 weeks of university.
Wow.
That gave him 1 year, a letter of authority to teach 1 year.
Okay. You were telling me a story, or maybe I read it on the back of one of your books as well too, that when you shook your husband's hand at one point, a lightning bolt hit you and you knew that was going to be your husband.
Exactly.
Will you tell me about that?
I'd just graduated from college with my Bachelor of Religious Education from Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And it was the summer, and I was shook awake. Somebody seemed to say, pray for God's guidance. I knew I was wanting to become a missionary into South America.
Okay.
And that Sunday I prayed and turned over and slept, came to church, and that Sunday morning Peter was at the church with a friend. Mm-hmm. And I just said to my sister, shall we say hi to both of those? We knew them from Bible school.
Mm-hmm.
When I shook Peter's hand, it was like a lightning bolt hit me.
Yeah.
And I knew it was you. This is the man you may marry.
Wow.
And
Okay. So how did that come to fruition then? Did you get married shortly after that, or?
Peter was in his first year of university,
Yeah.
at summer school. And on the first night that he became a teacher, first week in September, first days in September, he'd left his pound of butter on the south window and the blind wasn't pulled. And he came home at the end of the day. The butter ran from one shelf to the other, and a puddle of butter on the
The
floor
sun melted it.
had melted all of it. And he cried out, "A wife, I need a wife," or his inmost being cried out.
Yeah.
That night he couldn't fall asleep. He prayed, he sang, and he did and talked against the enemy. He said, "Lord God, why can't I fall asleep?" And the Lord reminded him of 8 years before, the first year he came to Canada, when my brother and he had been in Bible school together.
Yeah.
My brother had told him about the 16-year-old who was working on her grade 12.
Yeah.
And he thought, "Oh, I'd like to meet her someday." And even though we'd been in Bible school 2 years, we never had occasion to talk with each other. But now, when he had his education and that his mother had a debt-free house, the Lord reminded him.
He wanted the education and his mom to be debt-free before he pursued marriage.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
And he was 27 at this time. I was 24.
Yeah.
And he said, "Lord, let me fall asleep and wake me early enough that I can write the letter to Margaret." And
Wow.
he came 1 week later, and we talked, and I shared with him in my answer how I knew when we shook hands that he was the one for me.
Wow.
And a week later, he came back from Lethbridge to Tofield, east of Edmonton. We had our engagement
Yeah.
on the 15th of November, of September. November the 11th, we had our wedding.
Wow. That's quick, hey?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he said, after we had gone for a walk, and my parents, Dad called him in and called us in and said, "Well, children, if this is what you want, let's thank the Lord and pray a blessing upon you." Peter said, "I didn't even have a chance to ask for you." I said, my parents knew I was old enough to make a decision.
Yeah.
But he realized he not only got me as a wife, he got a father in my dad.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Just so thankful for that relationship.
They were very close then.
Very close.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What was your marriage like to Peter?
Exciting
Yeah. Okay.
and challenging, but his love for the Lord was uppermost, and he felt he had to love me as his wife the way Christ loved the church, willing to put me first.
Yeah.
And very loving, and my older son is supposed to have told somebody Mother could have married 100 different fellas, but she needed some who would challenge her than Dad did.
Wow. Well, tell me about some of the challenges that you guys did have.
Well, he did not have the education. He had 4.5 in Ukraine and stepped into grade 11
Okay.
in Alberta. And then when he had no understanding of what even was taught in junior high and so on, but also his challenges with post-traumatic stress disorder because of the Stalin, and he had lost his dad at the age of 9,
Yeah.
and he was the only male, 5 sisters, a mother, grandma, and an aunt, all living together. And he felt he was the man of the house. Yes, her mother was pregnant with her last child. It was a boy, and very happy, but Peter became a full-fledged man with a team of horses at the age of 12.
Okay. Wow.
And
So he went out to work then when he was 12 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
And then how old was he again when he had to go to Germany? And
They're 14.
then he was 14 there. Okay.
And got into Hitler Youth
Okay.
at the age of 14.
So how did that pan out in your marriage, like the postpartum stress that you were talking about? Or
It was more
the
that,
PTSD, sorry.
yes,
Yes.
and he was inadequate within himself,
Yeah.
but he came up north here. He was teaching with the Hutterites 4 years, and then came up north to be a pastor of the local Mennonite Brethren Church.
Yeah.
And he was a full-fledged teacher, had growing family,
Yeah.
and everything just became too much.
Okay.
And eventually, after teaching 30-some years, that's when he became a counselor in Burdenberry for many years,
Okay.
and helped out in different churches 2 summers when the pastors went on holiday. He's practically spoken to in every church in the area here.
Wow. You mentioned, like you mentioned earlier, his struggle with mental illness.
Yes,
Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how he overcame it?
yeah. He felt totally inadequate,
Yeah.
and he eventually, I think it was partly doing too many things, the church and the school and building of the house and a family, and he just inadequate and needed to have psychiatric help
Okay.
twice in the psych ward,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
but he totally was freed of that.
He was, eh?
Oh, totally. We had 12 wonderful years of even going back to Europe and to Ukraine on a short mission stint,
Yeah.
and seeing all the kids grow up and getting married.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a wonderful 12 years after that.
What would you say, like what helped him come to a place of wholeness? What brought that about?
Well, and actually deep-seated counseling.
Yeah.
He went for counseling at different times, and also shock therapy in the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And just realizing his need, even though I would have said he's forgiven Stalin as well as Hitler, he had vowed he would grow up and become a test pilot and shoot down the Kremlin.
Wow. He was that angry at Stalin.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
was that. Stalin had hurt his mother that much by removing the father from the family.
Wow.
And he had to admit to God, that is up to you, God.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, the last area of him becoming free.
Wow. And so he did see total freedom after.
Freedom,
Yeah.
yes. But he was more or less hanging onto my skirt and hand. And then we went to Halifax to go to see the place where he'd come into Canada,
Yeah.
and where he wanted to introduce me to Halifax,
Yeah.
where he had said Canada is the porch of heaven.
Wow.
And the first we'd gone to Winnipeg, spent 1 week visiting there, and then had 30 days planned to go from the East Coast back to Calgary and then through the West Coast and come back. And the first night on that Via Rail, I had my stroke.
Wow.
And that ended all our travels.
Wow.
We were in the hospital in Timmins for 1 week, and then the underwriters, my son Dave, came to see how we were doing and planning everything about going home. But the school insurance, teachers' insurance, didn't accept it because Timmins and Grand Prairie did not have a ramp. So the baggage handlers would have to carry me.
And they didn't want to do that.
So I'm baggage.
Yeah.
The insurance said they could drop you, then you wouldn't, it would be worse.
Yeah.
So they applied to their underwriters. They approved a Learjet, 2 pilots, 2 nurses, Peter and me. And it took us less than 5 hours to come from Timmins to Grand Prairie.
And so they brought you back and you were attended to in the hospital here.
Yes, and
Okay.
then I was in the hospital for 3 more months.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Peter then became a man.
Okay.
He was no longer that little child that needed to hang on to my hand. We'd meet friends and he said, why are we talking to them? We talked to them yesterday.
Oh, really? So, like, part of his condition, like when he had a bit of a breakdown in the mental illness, he turned into a bit of a child.
Oh, fully.
Full child.
Full child.
Wow.
Full child.
Wow. And then coming out of that, when you had your stroke, then he
just overnight, well, within the week after we came home, he realized I could no longer take care of him.
Wow.
And within a week, he also made arrangements. He had not been driving the car for 2 years. He went and got his license again.
How old was he at this time?
19,
About.
yeah, 70, one.
In your experience, what advice would you give to people who are married or are struggling in their marriage? What would you say to them?
I would say that they need to realize they have not walked this way before, and that it's a new experience, and they need the Lord to direct them and give them advice.
Okay. What advice would you give to fathers and mothers for raising children?
For them to love regardless, but never to punish in anger.
Okay.
Just give them loving care. And my daughter phoned me one time. Her 15-month-old baby kept crawling out of the crib.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and she had disciplined him once, but he just was crying so badly. I said, Clara, crawl into the crib with him.
Okay.
And that settled it. She had not broken her word to him or given in to his demands that he wanted to get out.
Okay.
But often a child doesn't know by halfway through what it's all about.
And he went to sleep with his mom beside him? Wow.
He went to sleep, yes.
Okay, that's a great story.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to young people?
To young people,
Yeah.
Canada is a wonderful country.
Yeah.
And as to their private relationship, realize that there is a God vacuum in each one of them that the spouse can't fulfill.
Okay.
Be willing to commit to each other, be willing to love, give. Somebody has said, marriage has the ability to bring about all the selfishness that is in you.
Oh, it brings out all your selfishness. Okay.
Yeah. But be willing, for the sake of love, to love your spouse.
Yes.
And let God fill that vacuum.
Okay. Let God fill the vacuum first.
First.
And then go to your spouse for the rest.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What are your thoughts on this country, Canada?
Well, Canada is, as Peter called it, the porch of heaven.
Yeah.
It's a free country. The porch is where you leave your dirty clothes and your muddy boots. And I think it's up to the next generation to realize it's a free country and we should all try to keep it that way.
Okay. Margaret Penner, thank you so much.
Well, you're most welcome. It's been a joy and a delight to do this.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.